everybody. We got a great one today. For a change. Brian Tyler Cohen, who has over 3 million subscribers to his YouTube channel, is my guest. That's more than 10 times the number that I have, which reminds me, if you're listening to this on YouTube, please subscribe. Anyway, if you're like me, you're feeling a lot more optimistic about the election than you did when the, Republican National Convention in Milwaukee came to a close. And conversely, Republicans are feeling a lot less confident about the sure thing they thought they had coming. What a difference a month makes. It's going to be a close race, but now Harris is leading in 6 of the 7 battleground states, all 7 within the margin of error. But this is a very different story than it was just a few weeks ago. A lot can happen in the next 2.5 months, both nationally and internationally. We do not know where this is going, but the trends are such that Donald Trump is looking a lot less confident, and I'd say even a bit panicked. It appears from the data that Harris has picked up support among people of color, women, and young people, which makes perfect sense. And so the Republicans are going to cheat. They're giving local election officials the power to certify or not certify vote totals. Normally, say, town officials or county officials will simply count votes and report the totals onto the state, and that's where the totals are certified by the Secretary of State. In Georgia, it appears that local voting officials are claiming the right to certify, setting up possible mischief, and by that I mean cheating. And it appears that they're trying that in other battleground states. We're going to have Mark Elias back on the podcast soon to look at all the voter suppression and this new scheme. Now, today, my guest is Brian Tyler Cohen, joining us for the first time, and we're discussing his new book, Shameless, about, you guessed it, today's Republican Party. We start with the opening scene in the book, an averted intra-party fight on the House floor after Kevin McCarthy had just lost his 14th straight vote for Speaker. It's a great one today, for a change. Let's get into the book. You start the book with an averted fight. What's this guy, Mike Rogers from Alabama? Is he from Alabama?
I believe Mike Rogers is from Alabama.
He is really, his face is flushed, he's hopping mad, and he's pointing to Matt Gaetz. He's charging Matt Gaetz, basically. This is after the 14th straight vote not to seat Kevin McCarthy. And he's mad and he's accusing Gaetz. He's got his finger pointed at him, and his face is flushed, and he's about to get him with another Republican congressman. This is all intra-party.
Yes.
One of the other guys grabs him by the shoulders and then grabs him underneath the chin and yanks his chin back.
All on the House floor.
Right?
Yeah. For those who are listening right now.
So I'm doing what's written in the book. So you can buy the book to see exactly what it is. Don't spoil it for people. And then McCarthy is seeing this and is coming to either break it up or do something, but then he sees that the guy has been stopped and he kind of lurks back into the back.
And you have to remember, McCarthy is in the middle of his 14th attempt to become speaker. Even walking up to this stuff as it's happening is kind of validating its occurrence. And none of this is actually helping his efforts to become speaker. I mean, the optics of McCarthy trying to become speaker amid a Republican Party that is so steeped in dysfunction.
I sometimes wonder how much of this was strategic, because the next ballot was where he gets seated, right?
Yeah.
And because of their position and because people like Gaetz wouldn't vote for him until the 15th vote, he had to negotiate a lot away from the crazies.
Yeah, and I think to a degree, Matt Gaetz actually did win out here, and he did give himself leverage by virtue of showing, look, this will just continue to descend.
Yeah, so the nutcases got these really great assignments, these committee assignments.
And they installed a bunch of House Freedom Caucus members onto the Rules Committee, which is especially powerful.
And he agrees that one vote or one member can call him the question and have to re-vote again, and that happens, and then he loses.
A famously good idea by Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah. I think Nancy Pelosi had that, but no one ever
I would hate to be the Democratic member
Did that?
of the House conference who decided that would be a good idea.
That's a good point.
There's a big difference between the scorn of Nancy Pelosi versus the scorn of Kevin McCarthy.
I often try to figure out who started all this, you know? And sometimes I think, well, you can go back to Joe McCarthy, but that's not really his legacy. And Pat Buchanan, but I think it's Gingrich.
I agree. And I actually make that point in the book. I think that Gingrich is uniquely positioned as the person who is responsible for a lot of the hostility that we see in politics today, really changing politics from there being any incentive to work together, to work with the other party, versus what it became, which is just a party that was focused on defeating the other side, destroying the other side.
He did a number of things to do that. Well, first of all, he told his members not to live in Washington, to go home for the weekend. So you can campaign at home on the weekend. And before that happened, it was pretty common for members to live in the district or the suburbs of Maryland or Virginia. So their kids are sometimes on the same Little League team as another kid.
Can't have that.
Or basketball. You know, there was actually some comity because of that. Anyway, he put out this thing called How to Speak Like Newt. Here are some of the words. You know them, but I'll just go down. In this is to his members, to his Republican members, use these words to seem strong when talking about the other side. Traitors, sick, bizarre, radical, pathetic, anti-flag, corrupt, destroy.
Sounds familiar. This is his enduring legacy, and it still exists today. This was the base of the Republican Party as we see it right now. This is where that hostility was born out of. And so I think the modern Republican Party, if you're looking for the origin of it, I think that we could easily point back to Newt.
Yeah, and then I go to Ailes. You talk about Ailes here.
I do. And so if you look back at what happened in 1974, where Richard Nixon was forced to resign, he didn't have the backing of some right-wing media ecosystem in the same way that it exists today. And I know that we take it for granted today because it's such a major part of our political culture. But back then, there was no Fox News. Roger Ailes put forward what we call now the Ailes Memo. It would eventually turn into what Fox News is today.
So he did that in 74, and it started in 96. 96. But this is Ailes who headed up the network.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you look at what he sought to do, it was to make sure that what happened to Richard Nixon would never happen again. And now in Donald Trump, you have somebody who did something 10 times worse than what Richard Nixon did by inciting an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol and trying to prevent a peaceful transfer of power for the first time in over 200 years in this country. And far from being excommunicated, far from being forced to slink away from politics and shame, the entire party has rallied around him and has lifted him up and yet again given him the position of the Republican nominee for president.
Yeah.
Bolstered, by the way, by a right-wing media ecosystem who is content to lie for him.
This entire media system, including Fox. What's so funny about this is that then, of course, the Republicans, when the second time Trump was impeached, it was because of January 6th.
Yes.
And 10 Republicans, right, in the House side, voted for impeachment. Just 10. And Mike Johnson was not one of them.
Right. Mike Johnson headed up the effort to protect Donald Trump.
Right.
In the House.
And succeeded. He was impeached, and 7 Republicans in the Senate voted to convict. But McConnell said, there are other ways to take care of him. So what I found was this thing you put in, which I love, Neguse.
Oh, Neguse. Joe Neguse, yeah.
Yeah, Joe Neguse. Okay, so they just want to try to impeach Biden.
So what they're looking to do is basically cheapen the whole concept of impeachment. After having seen what Donald Trump went through, they knew that they can't make Donald Trump, Republicans know they can't make Donald Trump's hands look clean, but they can, or they could, try to make Biden's hands look dirty. And so they basically tried to paint him with the same dirty brush as Donald Trump was painted with. So they wanted to impeach him too. This way, they're both impeached presidents and those cancel each other out and they head into the next election on equal footing, thereby invalidating Donald Trump's one biggest vulnerability, which is that he is a 2-time impeached president and ultimately a convicted felon.
So they start an inquiry
Yes. An impeachment inquiry. So it's a yes. It's not exactly an impeachment. We're not even there yet.
But we're going to find it.
Right.
And at first they find something where he lent his son money for a car loan.
Yes.
On a car loan.
And as we all know, extremely damning.
Right. It was like $1,200 twice or something like that.
Very impeachable.
Okay.
Very high crime and misdemeanor-y.
Well, here we go. So Neguse, they're starting this inquiry, and he's talking to I don't know who Reschenthaler is, but he's some House Republican. And Neguse says in an inquiry to him, what is the specific constitutional crime that you are investigating? And Reschenthaler says high crimes, misdemeanors, and bribery. And Neguse says, what high crime and misdemeanor are you investigating? And Reschenthaler says, look, once I get time, I will explain what we're looking at. They had nothing.
They had nothing.
They had nothing. And so they haven't been able to impeach him.
But it doesn't matter because really what they're looking for, and this is part of the media critique, is they know that so long as they can have the optics of corruption, if they can say that they're involved in an impeachment inquiry, even though it's not a real impeachment, still think about how Fox News is going to cover it. Think about how OAN and Newsmax and all of these other right-wing media shows are going to cover this stuff.
Now these guys yell at the president when he's doing his speech.
Yes.
I think the first one of those with Obama.
Right, when he yelled, you lie. That was a big scandal. And now it's just...
It was not only a big scandal, but the guy made $1 million, got $1 million in fundraising. So they learned from that scandal.
Yeah.
What was that guy named Joe Wilson, I think.
Yeah. But see, that's where it started because now there's an incentive structure to do more of that. And then they can go on their right-wing media shows and use that to make money. And now really that's become the only way to even get onto those shows. That is the whole incentive structure. Yes. That's why we're seeing fewer and fewer Mitt Romneys and Liz Cheneys and Adam Kinzingers and more Marjorie Taylor Greenes and Lauren Boeberts and these provocateurs, because all of the incentive structure on the right, whether it's to raise money, whether it's to get booked on shows, is solely predicated on their willingness to add to the whole shock value of politics
and it's
today.
Not about legislating.
No. In fact, Madison Cawthorn, who's since been excommunicated from the party because he made the mistake of attacking his own party.
The sin.
The cardinal sin.
Saying that there was cocaine at some party or something like that?
Yeah, for Republicans. Well, he said that he didn't even bother having legislative staff. He had comm staff. And he sent out a memo saying that their staff was solely focused on just comms. It wasn't even worth it. Yeah, communications.
So I did a little bit of my McConnell. Here's my Reagan. And I don't know how much of this I should read, but to a few of us here today, this is a solemn and most momentous occasion. And yet in the history of our nation, it is a commonplace occurrence. The orderly transfer of authority is called for in the Constitution routinely takes place, as it has for almost 2 centuries. And few of us stop to think how unique we really are. In the eyes of many in the world, this every 4-year ceremony we accept as normal is nothing less than a miracle. And then it doesn't happen. I mean, it happens on January 20th, but Trump ain't there.
Right.
And he tried for it not to be.
Correct. I mean, it happened in spite of him.
Yes. And thousands, or how many people attacked the Capitol? Do I know? I don't know.
Well, I believe the last thing we were told was that the amount of people that were at Donald Trump's January 6th insurrection crowd was more people than attended Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. That's what Donald Trump said at the Mar-a-Lago press conference.
He just said my crowds are bigger than that. He said the January 6th crowd?
He bragged about the fact that this idea that his January 6th insurrection crowd was bigger than MLK Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech crowd.
Well, they were worse behaved. Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Well, that's like every day, and
that is a level of insecurity that you didn't know someone could be capable of.
Is this the day that he accused Kamala of using AI to make her crowd look bigger?
Oh, I didn't actually know that he did that. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That was on Truth Social. Yeah, I can't remember
Yeah.
if that was the same day. It was all around this period. Donald Trump is in this period right now where he feels so backed into the corner because the polling is obviously descending. He's looking at Kamala Harris and Tim Walz's ascendant campaign. And so he's reverting back to what he did in 2016, which won him the election, which was, as long as I can suck up all the oxygen out of the room, use myself to blot out the sun, get everybody's eyes trained on me, then I'll win.
I think he's doing one today as we
he
talk.
Is, exactly. And so he did the National Association of Black Journalists, where he denied Kamala Harris's biraciality. He did the Mar-a-Lago press conference.
Suddenly she's black.
I
don't do him.
Famously, Kamala Harris decided to turn black one day, I think was how he framed it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was the Mar-a-Lago press conference where he beat his chest about this notion that his crowd size was bigger than MLK's I Have a Dream speech crowd. Then he did the Twitter space with Elon.
But the AI thing is so stupid because how many people were at that 15,000 or however? And of those 15, everyone has a phone.
Yeah, it's 2024. What are you doing, man? Like, we all have eyes. I live streamed the thing. I didn't realize I was watching AI in real time, but
Wow, that's pretty.
Yeah. Surprise! You could imagine my surprise.
Jesus Christ! Well, way to go! If she can do that to make from every angle look like there are 15,000 people,
it's the sophistication of this campaign.
Phones. Let's go to here's one of my favorite parts of the book. It's Woodward talking to Trump. Trump says to him, I guess he's interviewing for the book he did, right? Woodward is interviewing Trump.
Yes, this is the paying down the debt portion. Is that right?
That's right. And he says not only will he completely pay down the $19 trillion debt, but that it's going to be pretty easy. And so Woodward, he said, I would get rid of the $19 trillion in debt. And Woodward asked how long that would take. And Trump says, I think I could do it fairly quickly because of the fact the numbers, and then Woodward interrupts, says, what's fairly quickly? Well, I would say over a period of 8 years. So he can't be held to the 4 years.
Right, of course.
And I'll tell you why. Woodward says, would you ever be open to an increase as part of that to solve the problem? Trump says, I don't think I'll need to. The power is trade. Our deals are so bad, and then it kind of ends. So he
basically decided, he added $7.8 trillion to the debt, and he decided that launching a trade war was going to be his way, his ticket to paying down the entire debt. And of course, didn't have that effect. Had the opposite effect.
Well,
and the federal government had to spend money to make the farmers whole who were losing money because of the trade war that Donald Trump started.
And they did it late after many farmers went broke and lost their farms, and some committed suicide because of it. In other words, so he put tariffs on their goods coming in like a TV, a Chinese television. They don't pay the tariff, the Chinese. If Best Buy is bringing in Chinese TVs, they pay the tariff, right? So it doesn't cost the Chinese anything. But China, in response, because they want to sell TVs, now their TV sales are hurt by the tariff. They put huge tariffs on our farm, on soybeans and on wheat and corn. And that kills the farmers.
Yeah.
Genius. And I was representing Minnesota at the time.
Yeah.
Boy, it really caused havoc.
But then he just tried to undo the damage by using taxpayer dollars to make them whole. So ultimately, it only just costs us more money.
It made some people whole, some people not whole. It was awful. And he actually doesn't know what he's talking about when he talks about tariffs. He thinks they pay the tariff.
Yeah.
So, sometimes they do. Okay. Raskin on hypocrisy.
So Raskin has this great speech that he makes, and I'll let you pull it up, but he basically boils down the Republican hypocrisy in just a few words by here, I'll do it.
I'll do it. Oh, I don't even use the language of hypocrisy to describe them, he said. Hypocrisy is the distance between your self-proclaimed ideals and your practice. They don't have any ideals. Their vice was cruelty and a desire to dominate and control at all costs. They're a rule or ruin party, so hypocrisy is almost a flattering term to apply to them because it suggests they have some ideals to portray. They don't.
Scathing.
Yeah.
Scathing. I thought you were going to do the paragraph where he talks about, where he says, I'm a liberal because I believe in liberty. I'm a progressive because I believe in progress. I'm a conservative because I believe in conserving the air, the water, the Civil Rights Act.
He's fucking great. Yeah. And speaking of which, I might as well bring up the fact that you have all these people who are contributing to the book, and some really brilliant people, including me.
Yeah. I have you. I have Jamie Raskin, Dan Pfeiffer, Heather Cox Richardson, Pete Buttigieg, Jen Psaki, Mark Elias. I mean, just an all-star team of people from all different walks of politics that I thought I would bring in. I wanted to speak to about messaging. I thought that in terms of being able to communicate effectively, that's obviously been Democrats' issue for a really long time.
We have complicated ideas. We have like the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah.
We didn't win on that issue till 2018. Which is after they finally had to show their cards on what they were going to replace Obamacare with or the ACA with. And when they showed it, there would have been like 50 million people losing their health care, and it would have been more expensive for people between 40 and 65. And there were all kinds of reasons. So in 18, we had a wave election for us.
What was the messaging surrounding Obamacare that was rebutted with the Republican messaging which was just that it would usher in death panels? What were Democrats trying to sell this thing as?
Well, unfortunately, what we're saying is, okay.
That's already...
It's a three-legged stool, okay? And one of the legs is that there's a mandate. You have to either pay a fine or join it.
That was the good part. That was where you started.
Now, wait a minute. But the other two legs of the stool, the reason we have that one leg that sounds terrible is that everyone's going to be covered, but they'll be covered for all pre-existing conditions. They lied about that, and And what was the third leg of the stool? I can't remember.
I mean, when you start off your messaging by setting expectations with a fine.
Well, I did that. I think we put that third.
Yeah. I mean, still, that's generally not the best, not the thing I think that's going to attract the most people. So I guess it's not surprising.
We also had Medicaid expansion, which meant that you could qualify for Medicaid at a very low income, and Roberts got rid of that. Remember that?
Yeah. And I think the irony of all of this too is that was how many years ago? We're looking at almost
2010.
About 15 years ago
when we finally passed it.
And the irony of that is if you zoom ahead to 2024 and what happened with Kate Cox in Texas, whose fetus had a fatal genetic condition and she ultimately had to flee the state. She had been granted an exemption by the state of Texas, by a district court in Texas, to have an abortion in that state for her own health. And Ken Paxton appealed it.
He's the AG.
He's the AG in Texas. He appealed it to the Texas Supreme Court, and
that's right.
That was overturned.
Yeah.
And you basically had this woman whose life is in danger, whose future fertility is in danger, and she was standing there in front of a judge, thanks to a Republican attorney general, 15 years after these people fear-mongered about non-existent death panels. They had literally manifested them. They created them with these abortion bans across the country.
Well, she was affluent enough to get a plane out of the state.
Right. For every one of her, God knows how many couldn't avail themselves of that.
Okay. So, killing the border bill.
Killing the border bill. So this was...
Talk about hypocrisy.
This is peak shamelessness and the most recent iteration of it. So for years, and I mean, you can attest to this better than anybody can, but this has been the cudgel that Republicans have wielded against Democrats over and over and over, fear-mongering about immigration. This is largely what Fox is there to do, is to fear-monger about the prospect of immigrants coming into this country and raping your wives and selling drugs to your kids. Every September, October, migrant caravans becomes the running story on Fox News, only to instantly disappear.
In fairness to them, only the caravans is not true. There have been people tragically killed by immigrants, but native citizens of the United States kill more people. Much higher rate of crime.
But they had the opportunity then to act on this issue that they themselves were beating the drum about over and over and over. And they finally had a willing negotiating partner in Joe Biden. And so Chris Murphy, Kyrsten Sinema, and conservative Republican James Lankford got together, negotiated a conservative border bill.
It was really Lankford's bill.
It was Lankford's
James
bill.
Lankford, and he's a friend of mine.
Which didn't include comprehensive immigration reform, which had always been a principal condition of moving any immigration bill forward as far as the Democrats were concerned. It was only border security. It also included Ukraine aid that ultimately passed anyway. So this was really just about border security. And Donald Trump issued his clarion call, made sure that the Republicans in Congress whipped votes against it, and they killed the bill.
Because he wants it as an issue.
Wanted to wield it as a
And Kamala is using it as an issue.
She is, and she should.
She's just saying what we were just saying.
Right.
He could have had this really strict bill.
This was their opportunity to do it. I don't know that, that you can get Democrats to negotiate a bill like this by basically by foregoing all of their leverage to the Republicans. But the reason he felt so comfortable to do it is knowing that the right-wing media ecosystem exists in this hermetically sealed bubble, even though Donald Trump came out and said that he has to kill the bill. I think he even posted about it on Truth Social that they have to kill the bill, even though he broadcast it.
So like if the Democrats say the earth is round, like this cantaloupe, and Republicans say, no, it's round like this plate.
Yeah. Then the press would say feud erupts over size of Earth, over shape of Earth. There's no scrutinizing. It just basically, for so long, they'll act as just a transcription of what bad faith actors say, as opposed to doing the job. And so I'm curious, like, what you think about this, because normally you would think that if somebody says that the Earth is flat, for example, to use our example, wouldn't the coverage just be that it's not? Aren't you allowed a media figure?
They would on that one.
On that one. But I mean, there have been so many examples that were done in such bad faith anyway. And there is like
you had some statistic on how many times they ran stories about Hillary's.
I believe it was 69 cover stories in the New York Times in the lead up to the 2016 election. And yet when Ivanka Trump did the same thing, or a very similar thing by using a personal email address for government business, there was no coverage of it. I mean,
she was part of the administration.
A12 maybe, certainly not front page of the New York Times, and certainly not 69 separate times.
So Trump has said a number of times that immigrants are poisoning our blood.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that was Hitler. Hitler said that in Mein Kampf, that all great cultures have died because of their blood poisoning.
Yeah.
And yet Republicans and Fox keep using that language.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think at this point, as a party that can't rely on policy to get them elected, I mean, they have no popular positions at this point anymore, whether it's on healthcare, whether it's on common sense gun safety reforms, whether it's on reproductive rights, whether it's on workers' rights or unions or paid family leave. On issue after issue, they don't have any overtly popular opinions. And so they have to rely on either culture war or just straight xenophobia, racism, homophobia, whatever it is that they lean on. But they have to dig in deeper and deeper on this, because at this point, that's all they have left.
Immigration is their strongest issue, and Kamala is countering it with, we had a bill.
Right. Smartly so.
Now, you had these great contributors, Buttigieg and Elias and Mehdi Hasan, et cetera. Do you have any favorite quotes from some of them?
Well, I'll bring up yours first and foremost, and that is, I'll let you say it with the bumper sticker.
Well, all our bumper stickers end with continued on next bumper sticker.
That's right.
Their cut taxes would be one of their bumper stickers.
I mean, you look to today, what were Donald Trump's calls to action? It was drain the swamp, build the wall, lock her up. Those short, pithy, compelling calls to action.
Does Kamala campaign have some pithy ones?
It does. For the first time in Democratic messaging, it's not, okay, let's talk about the intricacies of Medicare Part D. It's we're not going back.
The three-legged stool bumper sticker.
Okay, guys, listen.
Continue on next bumper sticker.
Yes, you're going to have to pay a fine, but
yes.
It is, we're not going back. It's when we fight, we win. We've got Tim Walz out there saying, mind your damn business. This is stuff that's compelling, that's relatable.
And he did a newt. He said, weird. They're weird.
They're weird. And in retrospect, the reason that sticks, that's so sticky as a slogan, is because it was so obvious to everybody before by virtue of what they were doing. But I guess we couldn't put our finger on a way to really sell it. And now, if you think about this on an individual basis, if somebody tried to insert themselves between you and your doctor, you'd think that person was weird. You'd think that they were a creep. If somebody tried to insert themselves between you and a loved one in an LGBT couple, you'd think that person was a creep and that they were weird, or decided to tell you what books you can and can't read, or concerned yourself with whether somebody has kids or not. The whole thing is weird. And I think by virtue of landing on exactly what it was, and now, of course, they're freaking out about it, but as they say, a hit dog will holler. And so they know that
They say that?
Well, I guess they do.
Okay.
I do.
I thought it'd be Yelp.
Oh, the dogs themselves.
Yeah, a hit dog. Well, anyway, no, it sticks because it's
true.
sticky. We had these we would have these retreats, the Democratic senators, and they were always on messaging, and they were always kind of terrible. And we had these two brothers who wrote a book called Made to Stick. And the first day they were there, they're going to speak before dinner, and I said to them, "Boy, I'm really eager to listen to you. What's the name of your book?" And they said, Made to Stick. And I went, okay, great. Make it stick? No, Made to Stick. I was like, oh, okay, great. I got it. Made to Stick. Yeah. So they do their presentation. I come up to them and I say, that was great. What's the name of your book again? And they said, Made to Stick. And I said, Made to Stick. They go, yeah. So the next day they were speaking in a panel discussion at breakfast. And I went up to them and I said, I'm looking forward to the panel. What's the name of your book? And they said, Made to Stick. And I said, oh, okay, yeah. Not Make It Stick. They, no, it's Made to Stick. Okay, good. They did their panel. And then I went up to them and I said, that was great. What's the name of your book again? And I must have done this 10 times to them during the weekend. Once I came down the elevator, I saw them and I said, I tried to buy your book, but I can't buy it. They said, it's on Amazon. I said, I don't know. I put in Make It Stick. And they went, no, it's Made to Stick.
Screw you, man. Screw you.
So the name of this book is Shameless.
Shameless, Republicans' Deliberate Dysfunction and the Battle to Preserve Democracy. Shameless, look, I mean, that's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing today. That was the part that I think I had so much trouble reconciling. And the reason that I wanted to title it that way is I'm seeing so many ways in which Republicans wield their historical branding to give themselves cover to act in a way that's completely antithetical to that branding. So they present themselves as the party of personal responsibility, the party of family values, the party of the Constitution, the party of states' rights, of fiscal responsibility, of law and order, of the police, of the military, on issue after issue after issue. They are diametrically opposed in their actions to any of those pieces of branding. You look at fiscal responsibility, they added $7.8 trillion to the debt the last time they had full control of government. You look at party of family values, they are led by a guy who is right now facing 34 felony convictions for a hush money payout related to an affair he had while his wife was at home with their infant son. That's the party of family values?
It's an alleged affair.
Well, then there you go.
There you go. Now, the sexual assault charge is that was adjudicated.
That was adjudicated in civil court, so he is liable for sexual assault and defamation. But I mean, all of this just underscores the extent to which this branding is just the glossy veneer of a party that is morally bankrupt and bereft of any of these values underneath the surface. When you dig 1 inch beneath the surface, you see that all of this branding is just cover. And I thought with an election cycle coming up yet again, where you look at the polling and perplexingly, you hear people say that Republicans are better on the economy than Democrats, or that Republicans are better for families than Democrats. And there's no basis for any of this. And so I think it's long past time that Democrats undo these fallacies that prop up Republicans for so long and help them win elections on the basis of stuff that they shouldn't be winning elections on.
And you know, I love when Trump says, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?"
Oh, I love that too. If you look 4 years ago, we had, I believe,
gas was $1.59.
Yeah, I wonder why.
No one was driving.
No one was driving because we were burying people in mass graves in this country, and nurses were showing up to the hospital in garbage bags.
Yep.
Weird time to hearken back to.
Okay, but they have a deliberate strategy to confuse people and make it impossible to, unless you're paying real close attention to what's going on, to know what's going on, and that is flooding the zone with shit.
That's the Steve Bannon model. And it really is, it's not even to convince people of something. Donald Trump and his ilk don't have a basis to convince people of, and they know that the plans that they're trying to sell aren't especially popular. Really what the goal is to flood the zone with so much shit that it actually obliterates the very concept of fact, of reality. So people don't know what to believe. They don't know whether to believe the media. They don't know who to trust, for example. And that uncertainty, that lack of trust really creates an environment where someone like Donald Trump, a demagogue, can swoop in and exploit these people. And that's exactly what he did. That's what he relied on.
Like when on his inaugural, he sends Spicer out, and who says
Right off the bat,
first day,
biggest
crowd was bigger,
Yeah.
biggest in history, bigger than Obama's. And then what's her name, Kelly Conway, is interviewed the next day about it, and she says there's this thing called alternative facts.
What did you call alternative facts when you were a kid?
Shit. I mean, that's you flood the zone with.
I think you've written some
alternative
books
facts.
about that, right?
Yeah. Lies and lying liars.
That's right.
Who tell them a fair and balanced look at the right.
That's right.
So I wish you the same. No one's going to sue you. That's the problem. No one's going to sue you for this book. But that's what happened. I got sued by Fox. By O'Reilly.
Yeah.
Oh, God, that was great.
Yeah, I think Fox is on the other side of the lawsuits these days.
Yeah, how much was it?
$787 million, almost $1 billion to lie on Donald Trump's behalf, which is already bad enough. But imagine being a news organization, an entity that's there purportedly to inform people that has such high liability because they can't stop lying to the tune of almost $1 billion on behalf of the guy that they're shilling for right now.
Well, my book was Lies and Lying Liars Who Tell Them a Fair and Balanced Look at the Right. And it wasn't long after that they ditched fair and balanced.
That's right. The shame of it being on your book title.
Yeah. Anyway, well, Brian, thank you. And good luck with this damn thing.
Well, thanks so much. I'm looking forward to seeing how this thing pans out, but I appreciate you having me on.
I wish there was someone who could sue you.
There's still time.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening. That beautiful music is by Leo Kottke, the great Leo Kottke. I want to thank Peter Ogburn for producing this podcast. We'll talk again next week.